Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, how's everybody doing? Good? Yes, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Uh, Hopefully, I've got a thunderstorm rolling in, guys. Remember, I live in North Florida, and hopefully it doesn't do anything to my internet connection, even though I do have a generator, but still, it can hiccup. You know how the timing goes in on that. I'm gonna bypass today the chicken talk because I think it was the last or the before last I gave a whole video on my chickens, my little group of chickens, and I did mention on my last one, I'm telling you, I made a mention about what I call that I tease my husband about the monkey cryptid thing, the thing that supposedly was out there, that he saw something, and I even went out with my trusty little camera, my camera on the go, and I went out there because I have those huge trees. I was teasing him about it. He hasn't seen it again. And believe it or not, would you believe that after I came back, this camera has a little thing that you unscrew it, and it has that little miniature SD card in the back, which I that's how I plug it in and I download my. I've had these things for years, by the way. All of a sudden, that SD card disappeared, and I'm like, by the way, that thing, when these SD cards, when you punch them in, they stay there. They click in. It's not like it's going to shake and pull out. That SD card, and it's really funny because when I did that broadcast, my last show, I joked, I go, well, I hope I caught it. I don't know. I can't find the SD card. Bottom line, I don't have that small video that I shot out there. So, but anyway, and for those of you who didn't catch last week's, about, I want to say it's like been 3 or 4 weeks. We have really huge live oaks here on the property, and I was out there. It had just rained, and as you know, especially around here, when it rains a lot, even though it's not raining, you'll get sprinkles, sometimes a little bit of sprinkles from the leaves, from the branches overhead. And I had run out to feed my chickens. And my husband, he had come out, and I'm just hurrying along, like thinking, man, I better. All of a sudden, I feel like a bunch of, well, I thought it was starting to rain again. And he's telling me, he says something to me, and I'm like, I'm not paying attention. Later on, he tells me, he says, look, I saw something up there in the branches moving along. And he says, it jumped from branch to branch. Remember, my trees are 500 years old. These things are huge. And he says, and of course, we have squirrels and we have an owl. And you could tell, like, in other words, we're pretty familiar with what we got out here. And he was trying to describe it. And I realized later on that when I felt a huge bunch of drops on me, is that he says it was going out over the branch, over me. Okay, and he says, look, it was so heavy that it bowed down the branch. Okay. Again, I tease him about this. I call it the monkey cryptid. He wigged out. When you see somebody legitimately wig out, he did. And we haven't seen anything like it again. We haven't. Like I said, we're familiar. And he was like, man, it was big enough. And he was like, he goes, it looked like a monkey. That's why I came up with that, by the way. I just didn't pull that out. Again, we haven't seen it, but that's something to think about. It's like, wouldn't you know it, Marlene? Believe it or not, I'm always looking at the angle of I don't want anybody to come in and get one of my chickens. So, But this wasn't a bird, in other words. This wasn't a bird of prey. It wasn't these little squirrels that are all over the place. Owls, obviously, they don't hop from branch to branch and bow it down. So, again, big question mark there. Eventually, hopefully, we will get an answer to that. Also, believe it or not, I was already, because it's already out in the stores, Halloween stuff. I hate it. I hate it, believe it or not, that so early that they're already throwing us into this thing about thinking of the end of the year. But anyway, I started thinking countdown to Halloween. So yes, this year I am going to have my live stream again for Halloween. All right. Also, now that I've settled down in this new place, what has taken me almost 2 years. I'm gonna start going out to Comic Cons. When I say Comic Cons, whether they're horror cons, uh, Paracons, Comic Cons, I'm gonna start going out to there. I'm undecided yet whether I'm gonna put in a table and just see if I could sit down with some of you guys and get some stories, or if I'm gonna end up going as a reporter for Erie News. I'm still up in the air about that. So you'll hear more from me on those things as we start going towards the end of the year and even into the beginning, because as a lot of these cons, they're booked and everything is done months in advance. And like I said, a lot of these places have been on hiatus for what, 2.5 years after the COVID thing. So they're gearing up and everybody's dying to go out there and be weird, dress up, whatever it is, superhero, anime, whatever. Because I used to participate a lot in these cons before, like in 2015, 16, 17, 14. I went to a bunch of them as a vendor. So there you go. I will keep you guys updated, but let's get on to the good part. The good part is that we have a guest tonight on the show. This is his first time being here. His name is Alexei Novizky, and he's an astrophysicist and an engineer. He's written the amazing book, The Infinite Pool of Experience and Awareness. Um, it seems like the entire science behind what it is we call consciousness and being human. He's also the inventor of the Skatecase and the Mansion Yacht. And we're also going to talk to him about a new book that he just told me before we started recording that he's working on it as we speak. Help me welcome him. By the way, I'm going to call him Lucius. How are you doing today, Lucius?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Great.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Anyway, we could obviously you're an engineer, and I had asked you previously, and I'm curious to how did you how did you become interested, or did you have an experience that led you into exploration, of whether you want to call it the outer consciousness, anything out there that basically that you think connects with us?
Well, you could say I've been learning in my dreams since I was like 5 years old.
Okay.
Kind of just waking up knowing how to do things that I really didn't know how to do before. And
Really?
yeah, so like when
That
I
is
was
great.
yeah, it's pretty easy in. So like when I was 10, basically I got really into meditation and trying to kind of figure out what was going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at that point, you could say I had a very enlightening experience where I was kind of shown the delusions of mankind, like how we're all born into different states of delusion. We got like the wants, don't wants, assumptions and expectations. They create
Okay.
hate, like all this kind of
How old
stuff.
were you then when you had that dream?
10, and that wasn't really a
How
dream.
did you handle this? Because I'm thinking most 10 years old would have been like, how,
Oh,
I
I
mean,
went. I went to my parents and I said everything is fake.
they must have been, oh boy, he's at it again.
Like, what's he talking about? It was more of like, we put the rocks where they are. We created all the philosophies we follow. So it's not like things are fake, but everything's
Hmm.
man-made.
Right,
Um, yeah. So
right. Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, I think I understand. Whereas, like you said, schools of philosophy, for example, the originators of these different schools of philosophy are men. Whatever their philosophy was. Is that what you're referring to, or?
well, I mean, that's one aspect of society that we live in. Like we have is philosophy, but then there's also like that just even just going to school, is something that
Sure.
man has created. Where all the concrete is on the planet, the positions where trees are left. Um, Basically, we've created this entire world from scratch. Everything is man made, basically.
Okay, so you were talking here structures outside of nature. Okay. In other words, let's say if there's a place, let's say one of these pristine forests, they say no human foot has ever set there. You're not talking about that. You're
No,
talking
no,
about
no.
you're talking about habit ha inhabited or once inhabited by mankind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much that in the physical sense. But then, like you
Okay.
were mentioning earlier, like the philosophical sense, like the points of view that we all have as we're
Mm-hmm.
being raised,
Sure.
they all come from being taught. This person said these kinds of things, these persons said
Sure.
this kind of things, and so they all kind of like create the accepted view of reality. And if you don't follow that, now all of a sudden you're crazy or you're like a
Oh, of
quack or a
course.
bum. Something like you get what I'm
You know
saying,
what? I hate to say this, but you're very much, and I'm going to say there's a lot of inventors, Galileo, I mean, among others, that they were basically, uh, they were sometimes killed or exiled because they didn't conform to what how they wanted, I guess the powers that be, I don't know, wanted everybody to believe, like, no, no, you're screwing it up for us, be quiet. Or we're gonna like yeah, that's quite always been the, even Luther, if you want to look at as far as what happened with the schism with the Catholic Church, which is a big deal, and even prior to that, and who knows how many other things. That, let me tell you, what, when you had that dream when you were 10 years old, was there a trigger? Was there something going on that you had that dream, or it's just one day that you had it?
well, that one wasn't a dream. That was a very real event. Like sitting in meditation, literally like a vision of a being in front of me teaching me
Okay.
the delusions of mankind. I wouldn't call it a dream.
So you were like like a, okay, and I know what you're like, lucid dreaming in a way. Were
So you
you
could.
like,
It's hard to say that's the case,
right,
but
right. I know what you're saying. It's not like I dreamt, and I know what you're saying. But sometimes we have really wild dreams, but then when you wake up, it's like, okay, that was a dream.
well, I was awake the whole time. Is kind of what I'm getting at. So like
Okay,
I fall into trances
okay,
pretty easy to the point where like
okay.
every single thing I'm even seeing in front of me will like almost fade away, and it's like
Really?
a lesson of some sort or something like that. Um,
Wow.
yeah, no. So but then from my actual dreams and things like that is where I've always kind of learned. Um, and so like when I wake up, I know how to do things. Is the
You
easiest way
know
to put
what?
it.
Because the thing is that we only use, and the reason why I'm, you know how sometimes people have really vivid dreams, like when they're sleeping, and then sometimes stuff doesn't make, our subconscious mind, which is 88% of our mind, speaks to us in symbols. Okay. And usually the subconscious mind will feed you only enough that you can handle it. In other words, everybody's different. All right. So obviously
Definitely.
you must have been wide open if your mind was feeding you when you were dreaming. I'm differentiating here. When you were
No,
dreaming that
I
you're telling me I
understand.
had these dreams that, hey, I was, you, it sounds like you were like really ready to accept this. Whereas maybe some other person, it would have been no, the mind would have said, no, 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 we can't do that. We're going to oversaturate you with something that you cannot handle. Let me ask you, as a 10-year-old, when you had this visitation from this being, are we talking here extraterrestrial? Are we talking spiritual being? What do you think it was?
I don't. I think they're one and the same.
Okay.
Interdimensional would be the easiest way to put
Okay,
it.
sure, sure.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to say it was an orb, I don't think I would. I didn't call it an orb at that time. I would say it looked like half a nutshell as far as like the
Okay.
bottom, but the other
Mm-hmm.
top was basically torso up, hands both out like that, and being shown the delusions of mankind in a very telepathic sort of vision.
Right. I was going to ask you, how did it communicate with you through telepathy?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Um, yeah, but so as far as you mentioned earlier, like trusting the dreams essentially.
Sure.
And the reason why I've never had a problem doing that is because when I was 5, I literally like learned how to ride a bicycle in my dreams. Woke up, went straight to my brother, "Hey, I know how to ride a bike." He's like, "Show me." I had never done it before successfully. And I hopped on it
Mm-hmm.
and rode around in
No
circles.
training wheels, huh?
Well, he took the training wheels off for me.
Well,
He
no,
was
no,
just
that's
like,
what I'm saying. You bypassed the training wheel thing. It was like, I'm
yeah,
on it.
yeah, no. So hopped on it, rode in circles in the garage, like, and everyone, they're like, "What just happened?" kind of thing.
Okay.
So for me, not following my dreams is harder in a way.
It is. I know exactly
Because I
what you
mean
mean.
that's doubt, right? Like that's like literally you're instilled with like oh I can't do what I think I can do. um
So it sounds like you've really learned to trust the source.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
sometimes people are inspired or have what, but they distrust it. They're like, oh, you know what? Maybe, I'm just, I like, that's like, you know, that's something I wish, but I can't do that. In other words, they distrust themselves, their own
right.
inspiration.
Yeah, I mean and that comes down to, you could say, confidence or faith or insecurity and doubt.
Sure.
kind of like go hand in hand, right? And
Well,
so like then you mentioned like aligning with the dreams somewhat.
okay.
Yeah, and so when you I have that we can maybe get into that a little bit further. I do have like models all drawn up and stuff. But like basically
Wow. So let me answer something. Here you are, you're 10 years old, you're going into your adolescent years, okay? Are you still continuing to have these dreams or these visitations or what
yeah,
happened?
basically I wanted to know what was going on because from my point of view, telekinesis, telepathy, all of that stuff is very real. Since ever since
Okay.
I was a kid, it's very real. I don't, and so now then you have science saying no, none of that stuff's real. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So it's like, well, it is real. It happens all the time. So
Do you
let's
think
figure out.
stuff then like remote viewing and all these things that supposedly, let's say for example, scientists don't say exist, but then you find out later on they've got programs where they've been studying it. You're
Totally.
okay.
Yeah, and so that's when I actually got a hold of one. I'm sure you've heard of, maybe you haven't. I don't know. Yuri Geller.
Of course.
Yeah, so I got one of his little packets when I was like 10 or 11, and it basically had a couple little meditation exercises in it. But what it
Hmm.
came with was a dowsing crystal. So learning
Okay.
to douse with the crystal, like show me yes, show me no kind of
You're
thing.
dowsing with crystals. Okay.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
started practicing dowsing and then also remote viewing like colored cards in different rooms and just the exercises he had in his book, basically.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I know I'm very familiar with Uri Geller. I didn't know that he had that book that basically was teaching exercise. I'm very familiar with dowsing because I'm a dowser myself, and
Yeah,
I've dowsed for
I
many
looked
years.
for it
But
recently, but I couldn't find it. That would have been 27 years ago. I'm 37 now at this point, so I
okay, so
couldn't find it.
basically, what it's out of print and what
He has
the
other books for sale that aren't the packet. Like it was like
right.
a
That's what
super
I'm
packet
saying.
that came with actual tools to use to help
And you
practice.
know what? I hate to say it, but you know how everything now is on an ebook.
Yep,
That's one of the things I miss about printed material because once you had it, even if it went out of print, you had it.
right.
And because believe me, I'm if there was anything I hoard, it would be books,
I don't
printed
think I still
material.
have it. I think it
You
might
know
have
what I'm saying?
gotten.
But
Yeah,
there's been times where I've kept books, not really thinking, oh, and later on, 10 years later, it's like, my God, nobody has this book except me. It feels like that. Um, but so here you are, you're going into what point did you? How can I say it? You're taking all this information in. They're giving you obviously. It sounds like a really contradictory version of what the world is versus what you've learned. Or you know what I'm saying?
yep.
Like, where did you ever try to test any of the theories, or did you just accept it like point blank? Like, okay, because how did you handle that?
So basically, the way I saw it was there's Earth, there's the natural flows of reality, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
the man-made pebbles that are getting tossed in by everyone that's creating their expected versions of reality.
Sure.
And so for me, it was stay free of delusion. Learn what they're saying, pick it up, all that stuff, but know
Mm-hmm.
that it's just someone else's thoughts, it's someone else's experience.
Sure.
Um, it's not really like true to the flows of energy, and it's kind of like just man-made things that are.
Now,
Um,
do you think, I want to say, that saying somebody's perception is their reality. Do you think we're all living in different realities at the same time?
we're all living in different delusions that all exist within time.
Okay, so what do you consider then the reality? In other words, and I understand perfectly well, the delusion is because that's our perception, even if it's delusional, but we each have our own, like, because
Exactly.
obviously,
Even the most like sane perception is still
mhm,
considered a delusion because it's your individual perception of experience at the end of the day.
right, exactly. Yeah, there's nobody else in your skin. Uh, and you'll even have people that, are witness to the exact same occurrence and they'll have different versions of it for themselves
Exactly.
because, so how do you, how's this? So at what point do you say, because let me tell you something, that's because we get subjected to this messaging all the time about the world,
Right.
okay? Whether it's with our eyes, with, television, with anything, media, other people talking to us, we get bombarded with this messaging that sounds like it's contrary to what you see as, how do you handle this? How do you handle knowing or living one thing
I
versus
I hear you. So you have to know you. knowing your body well is key.
Okay.
Meaning like what creates every single little motion of your body. Like even if you have subconscious twitches and cringes, that
Hmm.
came from an outside thought of some sort. And so to identify where those outside thoughts are coming from, like even if it's just like, why is the color red making me slow down? Oh, maybe it's because man put all the stop signs everywhere,
Sure.
and so now red means stop, and red lights mean stop, and red means danger, and
Right. It's
um,
conditioning. We're conditioned to the.
yeah. So to be aware of your conditions is the first step, you could say, and then you
Hmm.
kind of somewhat retrain your mind to see things in a different way, to where you see it's just a projection of a man. Okay, that's just basically like the dog barking next door. They're just
Hmm.
ignore it. And so at the end of the day, you end up finding your true zero, you could say, like the you in full confidence, the you of full awareness, the you of full mind, full body, full spirit. And from that point, you can grow is an easier way
Okay.
of putting it. And so
Okay.
when it comes to like, so knowing your body well, say this person says something or you see something, well, you feel when you get shifted from the greatest connection to yourself. And
Okay.
so that I would say that's an important aspect of it. It's staying true to you.
Right. In other words, you know how to read your body or your
Exactly.
intuition.
Yeah, because from a moment of so say you could get in a point of meditation, you're sitting perfectly quiet, perfectly still. What's the next action you're going to make? And so by exploring that alone, it'll teach you a lot about yourself. And you'll understand like what kind of karma you're undergoing or what's going with it. And then from there you can basically do what I call ego steering, where
Okay.
you almost have to posture up in a way and like counteract the pacing emotions to bring yourself to zero. Um, yeah.
Let me ask you. So, and I guess my question is, how do you? And I know you're talking about, but how do you maneuver everything when you've surrounded maybe at some point with people that are not where you're at? In other words, they're acting on the paradigm of, if you want to call them delusions, and you're like, after a while, don't you like it? Oh my God, how do you handle that?
Um, you kind of got to go with the flow.
Okay, all right, now you go crazy, like, all right, you guys don't know what you're seeing.
And
Uh,
that's what's so important about it. I mean, you can get put into different flows of space. Like if you say you're at a rock concert or something like that, everyone
mm-hmm.
starts like I forget what it's called, where they start like hitting each other and like mashing,
Oh,
maybe.
that mashing, I never got that, and I know, but it's like I'm not into painters. Yeah, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
So
Go
like try
ahead.
to remove yourself from, well, it depends on what you're trying to do with your life, right? So if you want to go mash, go mash. But like as far as controlling your posture, it's going to be more challenging if you put yourself in that environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it's environmental, you could say. So even just being around people that are very pacey, kind of like what you were just saying,
Sure.
will shift you from zero.
Let me ask you a thing. Do you consider that self-preservation figures in anything?
Um, universal preservation,
Well, let's say, you know, let's go on the belief that really and truly the only one you have control over is yourself. All right.
right?
Control of anything else or anyone else is an illusion, which unfortunately a lot of us labor under. Okay. So you're thinking, let's say in an act of self-preservation, you could try to, let's say something happened, you could try, but there's sometimes choices that we make on an individual basis, which you just described it, make the difference between self-preservation or putting yourself in a situation where you're at risk. Different levels of risk, of course, but how does that figure in the way you look at, um, when you're saying, I've meditated? Is there something that gauges you, that tells you, you know what, in an instinct of self-preservation, I should not do this or go there or
Well,
whatever?
that's kind of why I went to universal
Okay.
preservation was the word, because what am I? Clearly I am
Mm-hmm.
my body
Right.
in a physical sense in a well, but in a bigger sense, I am also you. I'm also the
Mm-hmm.
people next to me, my family, my loved ones, the people I care about, my heart. And so far as far as like self-preservation, it's more of a universal preservation of like what creates me,
Okay.
in a way. But when you are part of
Right.
the universal preservation is key.
Well, and I
And
guess what I'm
universal,
referring to is maybe your physical aspect. I do agree with you. I believe that the us, whether you want to call it our consciousness, spiritual, I don't, whatever you want to name it, that is beyond like a collective. It's part of, it's not like that individualistic thing that we got going on with the body, with a flesh suit, if you want to call it that. But
Yep.
there's, you know, considering that we, um, in the world that we operate, that there's times where, I guess what I'm trying to say is that intuition, because I'm going to call it intuition. I don't know if you call it intuition, but that intuition that guides you that you've described, are there ever times where it works without, let's say, going into meditation, where there's a moment of self-preservation that it guides you and tells you, don't do this, don't go there?
Maybe that is self-preservation, but I always
Right.
see that more as like a synchronicity. Like that's a
Okay.
synchronous that so it maybe it's a self-preservation from ultimately falling into a tighter spiral of delusion, one where I'm
Okay.
disconnected from the laminar flow. So like say if I were to do this, then now I have to basically undergo some type of karma or something of that nature. So
Mm-hmm.
instead go this way and is that's this is the way of the laminar flow. Like your greatest spiral within
Okay.
time.
Now you said something about karma. How do you define karma?
It's the spiral you're currently within. Like what creates your next action.
Okay.
Um, like say after this interview, for example, we're
Mm-hmm.
all going to have an action.
Yes.
Why? You could do anything out of all the different choices you could do. I mean, you could do infinite things.
You know what? I want to stop you right here because you know what, and this is really no, no, no. This is really fascinating because you know what came to mind. I'm sure you've seen that movie, the first Doctor Strange.
I don't know if I've seen Marvel or like
Okay,
Capcom.
well, no, I'm not that much into the superhero, but I
Avengers.
really
I've
like
seen them.
I really like Benedict Cumberbatch. He's like, but he has this. If you haven't seen it, see it because you're gonna maybe you'll think of Marlene. There's this part where he one of his things is there's a scene where he sees all the infinite possibilities of a
Yeah.
moment. All right, and it's very interesting because what you just described was like, hey, that's Doctor Strange. This is great because, like you said, all right, let's say subsequent afterwards, of all the choices that you could make of what you're going to do or respond, as far as how you describe karma.
Yeah, and that totally is basically what the deal is. I mean, if you're at a point of true zero, like
Hmm.
true zero, no mind, like mind, body, and spirit perfectly centered, and the universe is somewhat crystallizing around you, or you're perfectly at one with the flow, you can see all the different potentialities of experience that where you could go pretty easily. And maybe it's not the exact future, but it's like a 99.999%. If I do this, this is going to happen. If I do that, that's going to happen.
Now,
To where kind of like where you're going.
right. Now, let me ask you, how do you figure that, like what you just described, when you have to interact with other people who you do not know what they're going to do as in how it affects you? Okay.
Yeah.
How do you know until what? Till you reach that moment or what?
Basically, in order to even connect with someone, you have to somewhat jump into their delusion. So it's a merging of
Wow,
experiences.
my God. That's Lucius. That's a big head game. You know that. I'm listening to you and I'm like, whoa. But it's great. Keep going. I'm like,
And like the easiest way for me to describe that is like, and so every experience has a different length. For example,
okay.
and I always go to the extremes because it's really easy to see for most people. Like if there's
Mm-hmm.
a drug addict, they basically need to finish their spiral every like 20 to 30 minutes or something like that.
Okay.
And so if you're in a bigger flow of space as far as like your line of sight, you can
Mm-hmm.
easily look into the delusion of someone, see what they're doing, see how they react, and you basically can jump into their spiral of existence and help guide them to the bigger flows of reality. And so when it comes to like interacting with a person at any time, any moment, you see what they're experiencing, right? I mean, people naturally do that all the time. Like when someone's busy, you don't bother them. If
Right.
someone's at the counter, well, that person's probably the clerk or something. I don't know. You buy the food from them. So people
Mm-hmm.
naturally always jump into the delusion and expectation, the assumption of the other person.
Okay.
And so that's what it comes down to is being able to, in quotes, speak many languages, as into like be able to go with many different flows of experience, right? And so you kind of have to like learn how to maneuver within those flows of space time.
Right. And
Meanwhile,
and
staying rooted and true to yourself, right? And
that's the
understanding
part I was like, I'd be like, whoa. I mean, sometimes I have a time like remembering what did I eat yesterday, because we're so caught up multitasking.
right?
you
Yeah.
know, that you kind of lose that. And even now, for a lot of people, you just tell them to simply meditate, which is to stay still and not talk, and they can't handle it. Like put the phone down and go sit in a corner and don't listen to music, don't watch anything except maybe go. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
impossible for a lot of people. They think
Well,
it sounds simple, but it's not.
Well, for most people, like as life goes on, the delusions get compounded on top of each other
Sure.
to where they find themselves stuck in like this, okay, now I do this, now I do this, now I do this. And all they can ever see is their line of sight. I mean, that's all anyone ever has. And your line of sight is directly related to the spiral of experience you're existing within. So like if your line of sight is like, I need to finish high school,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to want to do anything different until because you have to finish high school first. Now, if your line of sight is I'm going to the grocery store, that's
Right.
like your line of sight. It's how far into the time you're able to see, make decisions based off of. You can't branch away from there because you've already created that entire experience almost. Um, so you find that people take these different lengths of spirals and they can even solidify to be like years long,
Sure.
you know?
Of
Yeah.
course. Of
Or
course. There's
lifetime.
people.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, it was called setting a goal. I'm just being facetious, but you know what I'm talking about, that there was a time like write down your goals and make them happen. What's your 5-year goal? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Everybody's
Where,
supposed to have, I mean, I had mine,
yeah,
I have
no,
my 10 year of my life. And so that's why it's like, how it's good to have goals, but it's
sure.
also good to be flexible because if not, you end up um, kind of blocking yourself off from reality because you've solidified into this like posture
Ri-
doing this specific thing.
I see it as rigidity eventually equals death.
Yeah, and also it's harder to connect to certain people. Um,
Of
yeah,
course, because sometimes you will come across people that are really, really outside of your realm of interaction, and if you're really rigid or not flexible, there's no communication, even if it's nonverbal. Let me ask you, when you said that you said earlier that thing about um, I don't know if you consider them inter or intradimensional beings,
yeah.
as far as extraterrestrials. Are they the source of what that visitation that you had?
It's always a meeting of halfway, right? So even if you're going out on a date, right, you have to go there, and then the girl has to go there, or other way around. So it's like always a meeting of halfway when it comes to the
Okay,
universe and experiences happening. And so in a way, I would say that we met halfway. You know,
okay,
like I was reaching out, meanwhile they were reaching out, and so it's a connection of the two. Um,
but and obviously it sounds like it wasn't like this one time thing where you said, "Man, that was really crazy." It made it you made an impression so much that was years and years and years ago, and
yeah.
it sounds like it. And from that moment, the way you looked at life or living changed profoundly.
Well, I
Um,
would call that a lesson. It was like one lesson.
okay,
Um, yeah, and like as you gain awareness, you're able to get more lessons. It's the easiest way of
right.
putting it. Or
There's,
like
there's,
more aware because like in order to understand like some of the stuff, you have to know astrophysics. Like,
okay, all right, and
right?
and that's super interesting because I know that. But my point, I guess, is when you were 10 years old, you weren't an astrophysicist. You were a kid. You see
No,
what I'm
but
saying? And you
in order to
you.
yeah, so but to explain it to other people, well, they want
Oh, sure.
scientific explanations. So now I have
Yes.
to go learn all the science so I can give it to them in a scientific way.
Let me ask you, do you think that what you're describing, you can measure it, model it? I mean, because it
Yeah,
sounds like something, really?
yeah, I've been
To me, I'm just saying it, like, to me, it sounds like something that if somebody said, hey, I want you to reproduce this in a lab, or give me a model for it so that I can do it.
yeah, I guess the thing I've been working on, I had patent pending. It's the
Okay.
interdimensional telescope.
Really?
So like a telescope that will allow you to see into different dimensions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Let me tell you something. That is like, phew. Now, is this, I'm not gonna, this is me like not knowing. Is this something? No, it's not like the Collider, the one that they've got the CERN thing, right? We're talking totally different things, right?
They are different things. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but they almost work off similar principles, like of having
Mm-hmm.
to accelerate space timing while creating counter rotations. Basically, you need to make a magnetic vortex. Easiest way to put it.
Okay. But what you're thinking of, it's something, what's the word I'm looking for? Smaller or more, or is it because that thing is huge over there?
Well, no, it's not actually smaller. If anything, it might be a little bit bigger. This one would be.
Talk about
So,
my misunderstanding.
no, no, you're understanding correctly. So basically, from the very simplest, most rudimentary version of it, it needs to be like at least a 12.5 mile long straight tunnel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because you need to stretch the space that would be like 1 mile away from you to
Mm-hmm.
12.5 miles away from you, meanwhile creating a counter rotation of 4 times. And so
So
that just comes down to like the different layers of experience that exist within our dimension, you know? I could get more into that layer later, but
sure. Oh,
basically,
and let me ask something. When you're saying that 12-mile stretch, basically, what are you trying to do? Bring those 2 points together within that?
no, it'd be more creating an expanded light state. So we think
Oh,
we do live in a universe, right? But
right.
we think that the universe is expanding from every single point in space and time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
or you could say that our perceptions are being stretched based off of our inertial reference frame within time. So there's two different ways you can look at it.
Now,
You could, yeah, so like the
okay.
universe is expanding is literally just a physical on physical relationship. But at the most fundamental level, we have a consciousness perceiving a field of energy. And so
Okay.
that's why the universe looks like it's expanding from every single point in space. It's because no matter where you would be, you would still be within that greatest orbit of all time.
Now, let me ask you, in this interdimensional, if you were successful, and we could look, basically what you're describing is being able to view into other dimensions. Or,
Yep. With just your normal eyes, you just look down the tunnel, you'd see another dimension.
whoa, that's that right there. Is that, do you think that's, I don't know, I guess, fear of the unknown kind of deal that we've been ruled by. What do you think will come of it? Let me ask you, is it looking or are we opening a doorway? Or is it just being able to look in there?
It's harmonizing two layers together, but it would turn off the second you turned it off. It would turn on the second you turned it on. And if they were looking through
Mm-hmm.
it, they would also see you.
Okay.
So
All
it'd be
right.
opening a doorway potentially.
Okay. Okay. In other
Yeah,
words,
I
it's
mean
not like
that
you only one on our side. We'd be looking there, and let's say we would be
exactly.
looking at a landscape, whatever. You know.
Yeah, no, it most likely they'd probably, it's I think that they would be able to see through as well.
Oh,
Whatever's on the other side would be able to look back. Yeah, for sure.
what do you think? What do you think would happen, or what do you think you will see? Let's say because you. This is what do you think we'll see?
The now future. So when you, well, it depends. Are you looking into a less dense realm, meaning the now past, or are you looking into a more dense realm, meaning the now future? And so depending how far into time, in which direction you want to look, is what you would
Mm-hmm.
see. So you could either see like almost the Earth before humans were even on it, potentially, if you wanted to look at the past, or you could see the future of Earth. And it's not really the future; it's more of like a Earth in a denser realm. Um,
Right. I know
so
what you're saying.
it's
That
like
that
the
that
now
it's like
future.
it almost sounds like. I mean, could this lead to time travel?
Yeah, for sure. It's all within time. And so to do for time travel, you would basically turn it 90 degrees, like a 90-degree angle to our gravitational field, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, because if you're pointing the within the line, so say here's Earth, right,
Mm-hmm.
and here's space.
Yeah.
Density is towards the center of the Earth, less dense is up. But as
Okay.
far as the flow of time, like the flow of our four-dimensional experience of time, like our perception of time, that's related to tangential motion. So like the sideways motion.
Right.
And so basically by turning the device 90 degrees, now you basically have like a time machine. It's a
No,
machine that would.
I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, I'm sorry, I'm going by all the Hollywood tropes is like the butterfly effect. I mean,
Right.
are we, I mean, and I know that this is Hollywood making up a movie, but is that a reality? Do you
The
think that if
butterfly
we
effect?
ever, well, that when they say about this time travel, that if you ever, let's say, go back in time and you did something to alter it, something that basically you would see the results of it in the future.
Instant. Yeah, it's all instant because there's only one greater now. And
Okay.
so it would create ripples in the past, ripples in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's like quantum. That's where quantum entanglement comes into it. Past, present, and future all overlap in the greater now, which is like the bigger circle of all that.
So in
Um,
other words, it almost sounds like just watch it, but don't go there because it's like it would be almost worrisome what would come of it if we ever went, let's say, this is me making things up as I go, being able to go into a doorway into the past, let's say, like how
yeah,
would you, or by our very presence, or would that already have been part of that past anyway? You know,
I don't know.
you see what I'm saying? Is it like it's
That's where
almost
I can't really speak on that. I don't know. The way I do see it though is like when we look into the future, it's not necessarily the future we'll experience
mm-hmm,
because we still have to experience four-dimensional, our flow of time until we get to that point. But during that process, the flow of creation is still moving over that point that you've looked at. And so
right?
it's almost like water in a river. And say you're a drop of water and you have an out of body experience. Now you're floating above the river. You can see where in the river you will end up going,
Mm-hmm.
right? But by the time you actually get there, a fish could have swam by and moved a rock or something like that.
Sure.
So I think that people can see the now future and the now past, but they can't necessarily predict the exact future or past because of that.
Well, let me throw this one at you. As far as extraterrestrials visitation, I've heard the theory of that some of these ETs are our future selves coming
Yeah,
back in time, whether it's to prevent some catastrophe or harvest genetic material, name it. But that a lot of times what we're seeing is a future version of us. I don't, I don't know how far in the future. Do you think
yep,
that's a possibility?
definitely. And I think that is very likely because of interdimensional alignments that occur. So
Hmm.
basically, if you wanted to consider that we live in a black hole and
Right.
energy is spiraling towards the center, we
Hmm.
exist at a certain layer a certain distance from the center of a black hole, but there's always energy constantly spiraling inward. Like the energy of your creation exists from the beginning of time in that sense, the very outer edge, all the way to the center of time. And basically, when you're properly aligned with that flow, you're able to pass information from those past and future lives. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're gathering information from a denser realm,
Hmm.
there's a good chance it's like your future self in that regard.
So let me ask you that idea. You know how you always think of, how they measure distance, light years? Basically, what we're saying, it's not really light years as in travel distance wise. You know how they say by the light, the light years. Are we talking there intradimensional travel, which is not that idea of distance? I guess linear. It's
Not a
totally different.
totally different. Yeah, I mean, and that's where it's like, is the universe actually expanding? How far away are the galaxies really?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you
Okay.
consider the now moment and your perception being manifested from a fifth dimensional vortex,
Okay.
basically the universe is being stretched away as matter is crunching to you.
Okay.
But then in the past, everything reverts back to normal. And so literally the galaxies are the space between atoms, but they're being stretched away. And so they get spread out. And so there's different harmonics of resonance that match up with human perception. Because we experience it's hard to discuss, but basically we experience a piece of matter twice per orbit, once in the future and then once in the past, as it
Okay.
orbits around time.
Right.
So our whole idea of space, time, and how far away things are is based off of our inertial reference frame. And if
So
you're orbiting a black hole, half of the energy is being crunched to you and half of it's being stretched away. But then as you leave that spot, the energy returns back to normal. So you have a stretching and crunching in the opposite direction. And what we have is the human body, which is an overlapping of denser realms and less dense realms being manifest in that regard, constantly blipping in and out of solidity.
So in other words, it's almost like, let's say when they look at through these giant mega telescopes, what they're seeing in some cases is very old. In other words, by the time we see it, is that something
That's definitely like there's different ways to look at
like, in
it. I
other words,
mean,
that's not what you're seeing it now, but that's not really what it is right now. If there was a way to, because you're telling
that
me it's expanding, it's changing.
so there's definitely the current accepted view of the
Okay.
universal expansion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And That is exactly what you just said. The light we saw took 100,000 years to get here, or 14 billion years to get here, because it's 14 billion light years away. But everything is literally relative to your current position and your line of sight. So if imagine if we didn't even have an Earth, we didn't have anything, we're just floating in
Mm-hmm.
space. All the
Okay.
matter, all the light that you see is literally in your relative frame of motion. You
Okay.
could all be traveling a million miles an hour. You could be traveling, 100,000. Like it's all in the same speed as you. And so when it
Okay.
comes to orbits within a greater center, literally our entire dimension is orbiting a greater structure. Like we see a distance away from the center of time. And so when it comes to actually perceiving information now, have you ever been in a gravitron?
No, but I know what you're talking about. No, I
Okay,
look at that and I thought I'm going to come out barfing. So no,
the
I
easiest
know
way,
what you.
I have drawings of all this stuff, but like the easiest way to see it is like the energy between you and the center is being crunched to you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's that same energy, that same fluid of experience on the backside of you is trying to get stretched away. So in
Right.
essence, matter is so this is as you approach in the future, matter is crunching to you and light is stretching away. And then as you leave that spot of perception, everything
Okay.
reverts back to normal. Because it's all about perception
Perception.
in relationship to an orbit. So we literally only perceive a certain dimension as far as distance from the center of time. And that's related to our alpha beta state of consciousness.
Yeah.
Slow and fast gamma, you're in a higher frequency, and then delta and
Exactly.
theta, you're in a less dense frequency.
Right. Exactly. Which is yeah, a lot of the brain waves and stuff like right before you go to sleep, etc. Let me ask you, and this is a theory I heard about like maybe a couple of months ago. It's a little bit off of what you said, but you tell me what you think about this theory. I can't remember out of what university. We were talking about the theme obviously was extraterrestrial visitation, and he was saying that his theory was that contrary to the belief that there's a gazillion million, I'm exaggerating here, of ETs that have come or are coming to visit us, that in reality, most of them stopped long ago. In other words, that based on his model of civilizations can expand only so much before they start to, what I'm thinking of is before they start to collapse. That in other words, if there was a civilization on another planet, another galaxy, whatever, that was far enough to start doing interstellar travel, at some point they would stop because it would either be stop and conserve what we have, or if we keep expanding as far as exploration of other worlds, our civilization will collapse. And the theory was that in reality there's probably not even any ET visitation. But again, that's based on a theory of different from what you're saying.
Well, definitely different than what I'm saying, but I mean, I know what you're saying. It's like societies get to a point where they become self-destructive almost. Like
Right,
so,
like in other words, they expand, they grow, whether it's technology or whatever.
right?
But there comes a point that they outgrow their own survival. And they either have one of two choices. Either they stop growing and conserve themselves, or they keep going and then it collapses.
No, I hear what you're saying totally, and that's why just to kind of continue on that train of thought,
Mm-hmm.
they always kind of go circle back to that's why it would most likely be artificial intelligence if it were to have
Ah,
survived to that next layer, right? Like say, because the species might pass away, but our AI is still exploring space,
okay.
building other AI robots and doing all that kind of stuff. But that is thinking about it differently than what I was just talking about for sure.
Right. Do you think then, as far as let's go with the ETA, do you think they're strictly AI, or are we talking biomechanical ETs? Whether they're being sent as emissaries or workers or scientists, or are they strictly AI? That
Oh, I mean, I don't think they're AI though. I think that they're
no? Okay.
interdimensional. Yeah.
They're interdimensional, and I'm going to say organic as in non-AI, whatever
Right.
their organism is. Because, and then this is the thing, we get, and I'm sure you've seen it, we like they send out explorations to the moons of Jupiter and this, and they're like, it might be habitable because we think there's water underneath the surface. But I'm always thinking this is life as we know it. But that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that there's another form of life that could survive and procreate or whatever under circumstances that for us would be, forget it. There's no way we could survive there. So some,
Totally. Yeah, no, I mean, like all over the earth, there's extremophiles, right? And they can go into any different, like, so you have beings that literally live off chemical reactions within rocks already on our own planet. Like, so
hmm
yeah, life doesn't stop at the edge of the, in my opinion, right? It just keeps
right,
going. Um, every single little nook and cranny on earth is filled with life.
sure.
Yeah,
But also let me ask you: do you think then that the ETs that come here, they don't necessarily have to be like our life form. They
of
could
course
be
not. Yeah, yeah, no, they could be like, the further from earth you go, the less likely we will even be able to
hmm
recognize life because it's so
okay.
unearthly. It's just
Sure.
so out of our understanding of what that's life. Like we didn't realize that was
Yeah,
life.
that's actually right. That because
Yeah.
of course we only, we can only conceive, and I understand that. I mean, I think that is so you think then do you think there's more than one type of ET that interacts with us or has interacted with us?
Potentially, but I think at the end of the day, it's all source, meaning like very interdimensional, straight from our orbit within time. So like we live a certain distance from time, right? And
hmm
so basically, they would be most likely denser creations or less dense.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you think I'm gonna because everybody asks, do you think that they're observing us, friendly, unfriendly, or what? What do you think?
both.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if they're necessarily observing us, but they're definitely connected to us because we're all one within this giant field of energy at the end of the day. And
Okay.
then as far as like good or bad, well, there's good and bad all over the place.
Right. Well,
I think
yeah.
that the less dense realms, meaning like the outer realms of experience, are more
Yes.
harmonized than the denser
Okay.
realms. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't be some type of like evil intent out in those lesser dense realms.
Evil as we understand it.
Exactly, evil as we understand it, like good and bad. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And and I've discussed this on other shows. And by the way, I'm not abject. I'm not saying evil is good, but we have a moral compass that sometimes we would say an ET or whatever would have that we could say, well, they don't see things the way we do. We would call them evil, and it's like, no, not necessarily. They might do something that we perceive as being evil, but maybe for them, they don't. Their moral compass is totally different than ours, regardless of what the effect is upon us. All right. And I say, it's a bad comparison, but let's say a lion hunts down and kills a gazelle. Some people go, "Oh my God, it killed the gazelle," but the lion wasn't being evil when it was killing the gazelle. It was doing it
It was
for
trying to survive.
survival. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and I know it could. I mean, we could get into. You're hoping that if it's advanced enough, if we're talking an extraterrestrial civilization or species that can visit us or interact with us, that it would be so far advanced to say, let me take it easy on these poor humans,
Maybe, or they
because
just see us as like an anthill.
oh, see, you're going there, huh? You're going there.
No, but I mean, it's part of create. Like, it's part of life. Like, they've been around forever since the beginning of time to the end of time. Like, it's not gonna.
Do you think we'll
I'll,
ever be doing that? Do you think we'll ever be visiting other
we're already
civilization
visiting other
species?
worlds. Yeah, I mean, like, and we're already somewhat taming animals as well. Like, I've got my cat, and someone else has a dog or whatever. Like, we're already like domesticating animals and visiting other planets.
hmm
Yeah, so I would say if we went to another planet, there's a good chance we would try to domesticate the animals.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, especially if let me ask. You said that you were working on a book now. What is
yeah.
that book about?
The one right now is called Mind, the shifter and
Okay.
reorganizer of nodes. And basically, it talks about how the various states of your consciousness interact the fields of energy as matter is being manifest into our experience.
Okay, let me ask you, do you think then what are you saying as far as manifestation? As far as our thoughts? Manifest
Yeah, so
making something manifest?
yeah, basically how thoughts react to the physical creation. Yeah,
React but not create. Uh,
both for sure.
both?
Yeah,
Okay. So do you do believe that we can do that as human beings?
definitely.
Okay. And I'm going with that because a lot of people some of them, when you talk to them about manifestation, where, you know, in other words, physically, I'm going to use physically because of the perception that we have of things. Some people think that it can't be done, that's like,
Well, that's why I've been trying to like figure out good ways of trying to explain this stuff, right? And
mm-hmm.
this book I think does a pretty good job in my opinion.
So are you basing this on certain steps? Are you basing this on your own experience of this is what I did, or
so in the book Your Influence in Space, I start from accepted physics, theories
okay.
of relativity with Albert Einstein and all that stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
then I basically take it step by step. And so the first book is going through human evolution, the evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution, right? Like literally. So, we evolved on Earth, but we also
Okay.
evolved around a sun, and we also evolved in an expanding universe, right? So I go through all that stuff, and I show that light is the most advanced sense for human beings. It's not a speed limit. It's just literally our most advanced sense when it comes to evolution. The speed of light is our fastest sense. Electromagnetism is the sense of it is our information exchange system. So basically, everything's relative to our experience, and from there it goes into a new way to look at things where I introduce the mind, body, and spirit diagrams, and I call it the liquid light state universe, where all the
Okay.
different wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations are all rippling outwards, creating distortions within a field of energy. But then basically the only way that's even possible is if we're orbiting a black hole. Um, and so that goes into the crystal of time where we see that literally we're orbiting a black hole, which is
Let me
pretty
answer this because
wild.
I've always heard black holes will suck things in, and isn't that kind of like dangerous, or what?
Well, so that's where again, like, you got to take people step by step to show them that we actually live within a black hole, and
Okay.
then that we can't see one time the speed of light outward past the smooth cosmic microwave background, and
Mm-hmm.
we can't see one time the speed of light inward into the center of black holes. So our entire field of energy is literally one time the speed of light outward, one time the speed of light inward.
Mm-hmm.
And so from our perception, what we see is energy fractaling inward towards the center of all time. I know it's a little bit out there, but it
But and the reason why I'm thinking what little I know of black holes is that you hear there no light exists inside a black hole. All right.
well, light doesn't escape a black hole.
Okay, so light doesn't escape a black hole.
Yeah, so if you're in the black hole though, light's coming into it, but it's not escaping
Ah.
it. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
that's one of the I didn't come up with this theory. Well, I came up with I found out that I thought we live in a black hole, but then like it turns out
Hmm.
other people have thought similar things. So
Okay.
like it's I'm not the first person in a way to say that we live in a black hole. And there's definitely like very well thought out physics papers on it and all that stuff. So
I
it's
mean,
just interesting because
sure.
that's going to be like Galileo went around saying the Earth went around the sun, and
Hmm.
everyone's like, no, the Earth is flat, the sun goes around Earth. That's your perception, that's your perspective.
Sure.
So from Earth, looking up, the sun goes around Earth. Those people are right. But if you're out in space, you see, hey, the Earth is actually orbiting the sun.
Hmm.
So from our perspective, we look up, the universe expands from every point in space and time. Exit our dimension, our perception of time is being manifest from a certain distance from a black hole. So it really comes down to layers of perception.
Let
And
me ask you though, will we ever be able to observe that?
with an interdimensional telescope.
Oh, okay. All right. I was like, boy, I don't know how we are going to be able to, get that perspective there. That'd be like, you know what? One thing I wanted to
From
ask you
above,
about,
I don't think so.
but
Not,
you see what I'm
not,
saying? It's like, how would we ever be at that vantage point where we would
I
be
don't know
able
if
to
we
see
could do
that?
that one. Not to where you see like the whole black hole. I don't think you could have, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not
But
going to
you
say
see what I'm
never.
saying? To realize, yeah, we are in a black hole, even though
Well,
to us it might not seem like we are.
everything's relative, right? Like all the energy, all the information is just relative to our dimension. Um, and everything orbits. Everything is in a state of orbit.
Right, everything is orbiting one around the other, so forth. And when you said that thing about manifestation on an individual, what do you think is when we talk about collective manifestation, or do you think there's such a thing? It's the individuals, or whether we've been taught or shown or whatever
Yeah, I
to.
mean, at the end of the day, like physical manifestation, you could say, is an overlapping of all the wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations of every single
Okay.
person. It's the synchronization of all beings in the light state. But that also includes the lesser dense realms and the denser realms, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you have the less dense realms and energy spirals into the center of a black hole, our layer, our distortions, like the flows of our creation, are based off of the wills and wants of the less dense realms. But however, we have our field of energy where we're throwing in pebbles based off our own wants, don't wants, and we're
Right.
distorting the denser realms. So, in a way, the denser realms are a creation of our pacings, and the less dense realms kind of somewhat create our pacings to begin with.
And the reason why I'm asking is going back to what you originally said, that we're basically interfered with in our manifestation because of what we perceive or what we're shown. Okay,
Yes.
like,
Yeah, we're born into fractals of human creation to begin
right.
with.
So it's like, okay, you're going to see it this way because you've been taught or shown to see it that way.
Yep.
So, and
And
basically you manifest or you see what, that thing, you see what you expect to see.
yep, 100%.
So, yeah, that, and let me, it takes a lot to walk away from that reality though, from that perception, a lot. Because
It
I'll tell
is.
you,
It is.
I'll
Sorry,
tell
go
you
ahead.
right now, human beings are creatures of habit. We like our comfort zone. We like the knowns, even if it's ugly knowns. This is our comfort zone. It takes a lot to pull us away. I mean, even from habits. Sometimes we can't break habits because we're so enamored of our routine. How's that? So to do something like that, that takes. Let me tell you something. Hats off to you for being able to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people that would go, eh, I can't exist with that. Forget that. That was just forget it. I just no. I'm
Yeah, no,
not.
it's that's the most challenging thing. I've been trying to, not that I've been trying that hard, but like I first started speaking about this in more detail about 10 years ago, and it was kind of just
Mm-hmm.
like you learn to stop talking about it in a way because,
Okay.
you lose people are like, oh, I don't want to talk to that guy anymore. It's they're you
He's
either
making
like,
me think.
well, you end up being like, I don't know, everybody has their expectations, and if you don't fit their belief system in a way, then they don't want to accept it. Let me just put it that way. Like,
Let me
so,
ask you.
go ahead, sorry.
No, that the the theory that you have about that interdimensional, basically doorway or whatever. Would we ever be able to look into dimensions where we have other dimensional beings?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Like, I think that's already what's happening when people go into like a fast gamma state of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
is they're already
Okay.
tuned to that next layer of experience. And the way I see it is that like basically the brain is acting like a receiver, and
Okay.
based off of the frequencies that are existing within the brain is what layer of perception you're tuned to. And
Okay.
so that goes back to the different diameters of experience and realms and things of that nature. Because when you have your delta wave, that's literally like the longest wave of experience. It's the biggest physical wave, within electromagnetic densities.
Mm-hmm.
It's a certain size.
Right.
Theta is a different size. Alpha is a different size. Beta is a different size. Slow gamma, fast gamma. They're all different sizes when it comes to electromagnetism. And when you think about electromagnetism being manifested from a fifth dimension, you
Mm-hmm.
realize that each one of those frequencies has a very specific orbit.
Okay.
So the delta would be the biggest orbits of creation. The theta is one step in, alpha is one step in, beta is one step in, and each one of those is harmonizing with different fields of experience. And so basically, that's kind of what gives us the hint already that the denser realms are related to that 80 harmonics is within human experience because when people have near death experiences or they do DMT or something like that, they have fast gamma waves going off in their brain. And
Right.
that's when they have out of body experiences. That's when they're connected to angels.
Right.
That's when they're speaking in a way to the next dimension.
Right. They have that NDE, and I'm sure you've heard of that they've done studies where people will witness things because some people will say, well, no, they were overhearing things, and
Yep.
Some NDEers will describe conversations or other people in other rooms that there's no way that they could
Oh
physically.
yeah, like the people are having out of body experience. Like from what I've seen, the people are having legitimate out of body
Hmm.
experiences. Yeah, they're witnessing an event that is not next to them in any way. Totally.
Which also, and I know, and well, in this case, it's being produced because they're having a near-death experience. Something's happens to their body. That basically it's about to. Do you think people sometimes accidentally fall into that whatever that state of the brain where they see things or witness things? This is without not meditating on purpose. I'm not talking about whether you're meditating or trying to have an out-of-body experience. I'm talking about sometimes where you'll have people that say all of a sudden I was in another place. I saw either something from the past or from the future
Yeah.
without really looking for it.
Yeah, and I think that's when if you were to harmonize to a different layer of creation, you would be seeing something like that, either the now past or the now future.
Right.
Yeah, because
Accidentally is what I'm saying. Not because you were like, I'm trying to,
yeah,
you
like
know.
there's a magnetic hotspots you could say that already
Hmm.
naturally create vortices of
Okay.
energy. So like tornadoes of magnetic energy that are coming in, and so when that happens, there's a crunching and stretching of space time, or you could either have a magnetic vortice that's stretching space time or one that's crunching it, and depending on if it's being crunched or if it's being stretched, is whether or not you'd be experiencing a less dense realm or a more dense realm. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, oh yeah, because it's all based off of electromagnetic densities in that regard. And they're all being manifest from the same black hole, the same vortex of energy is creating all moments. All experience comes from one source, one giant vortex. And so the past exists in the now, and the future exists in the now. And when you create a magnetic vortex that goes from smaller to bigger, well, now you're
Mm,
looking into the now past. And if you create one that's going from bigger to smaller, you're looking into the now future. Um,
yes.
so yeah.
That is, I'm sure you're familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, or you've heard of Skinwalker Ranch,
Mhm.
in Utah, in the Utah Basin. And I've heard that they theorize that there might have portals there. Do you think that's a possibility of having portals that exist without being created?
Well, and that's the thing too, is what is the depth of, like, that's where I used to not really understand when people would say portal, it's like, oh, it's this physical portal, right? It's like a
Hmm.
portal, but it's all consciousness, in that sense, to where it's not necessarily like a physical portal. It's more of a harmonizing field
Right.
to where that layer is being harmonized to our layer. And so natural portals exist all over space and time in that regard.
Right.
So
So I
yeah,
understood it to be as where interdimensional beings, whatever they are, could cross over, and
definitely.
that they're there. Maybe
Yeah,
we couldn't see them, but in other words, as far as we know, they weren't created. They're there. For all we know, they were created by something else, but we just don't know it.
yeah.
And or is it something that opens up only at certain times and then closes down, and then opens up or shifts around? It's
I
one
do
of
think
those.
I think there are alignments as well.
Okay,
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely dimensional alignments.
what do you think they're
Uh,
aligned to?
the vortex of conscious experience. So there's you could say a vortex.
Hmm.
This is where I'm still working this out. But you
Okay,
could say
right.
that you could say conscious experience hangs 90 degrees to the vortex of time. So like um I kind of forgot where you were. Yeah.
Well,
So
let me ask you, and I guess what I meant to say was, do you think there's either things in the geography or the topography of certain places, okay, that allow or for these portals, if they do exist, to open or stay open, or can
definitely.
they just be random, like,
I mean, they could be random, but the way I see it is that they're definitely more related to like vortices, so like
mm-hmm,
magnetic hotspots, things like that.
okay,
And as
okay,
far as creating structures, well, certain shapes and certain um, dense structures already, for example, if you get a light and you shine it at a crystal, it makes a prism, right?
yes,
And so structures change the flow of space, putting in the simplest words possible. And so,
okay,
based off of the geometries alone, you can have those types of effects.
okay,
So I feel
all
like the
right,
pyramids were used as interdimensional telescopes of sorts.
really.
Yeah,
Uh,
because
Let me tell you
they
something. I've heard so many theories about what the real purpose of the pyramids were. Yeah, that
Yeah.
obviously they were not used as big giant tombs, that there
Mhm.
was another purpose for them.
Yeah, I see them as interdimensional telescopes because it has a lot, and that's why I was mentioning earlier, like the perfect zero, that perfect state of flow. And if you think about energy coming from the less dense realm to the more dense realm as a spiral of energy coming all the way to the center of time, um, our distortions, our fields of energy create distortions within that energy as it comes through. And what a pyramid does is it creates a laminar flow. So basically, it puts you in this, it basically makes the space time less distorted to where you can
Okay.
actually pick up those different harmonics of experience.
It's really
Easy for me
interesting
to.
that you say that thing about the spiral. I want to say in this third or fourth episode of Skinwalker Ranch, this last season, there's one point where they bring a Native American. Oh my God, I can't remember it. Well, he's very well known in the community, and he takes him up to a mesa, and there is apparently it's from when the Native Americans were living there for many pre. I don't want to say if it's BC or afterwards, but it's a spiral. It's a spiral. What he's showing, he pointed it out, and all of a sudden, when he points it out, you go, "Oh my God, that's right!" And he
Yep.
was describing it as a sacred place, and they were just talking about portals, and in right there in that middle, and he says there's a spiral, and you're talking about that spiral, and it makes you think, because sometimes we all get caught up how intelligent we all are now in present time,
We're
and
way more
perhaps.
disconnected though, right, than like the
Oh,
Native Americans were.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely. Al Lucius, I was gonna call you by. I could talk to you like my brain's going. It's like
There's a
it's
lot of
like
information.
no, it's not even that. It's not even that. It's that I hate to say it, but we become entrenched in our way of thinking, and I know that, like I said, because I'm a behaviorist, we get with exceptions like yourself, we get used to we feel comfortable in these routines or these ways of thinking, of perception. And when you start going outside of that, or somebody tells you, like you said, people don't want to hear it, we're like, oh, no, 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 don't want to go there, don't want to go there, don't shift my paradigm. This is, this is where I want to,
Right.
exist in. Don't start throwing stuff like might actually be true, because then what else out there am I? It does not is really a construct. You see
Right.
what I'm saying?
No, totally.
It's like I have to get up early tomorrow morning, so let me just finish binging my Netflix series, and that's that. Unfortunately, we've kind of limited ourselves. And I want to say that I think a lot of what am I thinking of? And I'm not going to say this is tied into academic knowledge or intelligence, but that spark that humans have of thinking of stuff, of invention, of creation, it's been dimmed because we're so caught up with technology because it does so much for us
Yeah, that
that
yeah, no, I hear you. I was just about to say because like where does the innovative process start to? And it's like for me it starts in my dreams and it starts with
yeah,
like the ability to believe that you can even achieve, right?
sure.
And if we're taught to like follow these structures, right? And
Hmm.
that even that tell you, your dreams aren't real,
Sure.
people won't have confidence to follow their dreams. And when it comes to like a creation and like the heart and the spirit of like it's all one. Like it's 10 times more challenging to complete something if you're doubting yourself the whole way through it.
Sure,
You know?
of course. Well, a lot of
Yeah.
things, or if you have the artistic type, they'll say, you know what, I wrote this piece of music, or this I'm based on a muse, or an inspiration. I'm going to ask you real quick, what do you think about Tesla's inventions?
He was a smart man.
Okay, do you think
Yeah,
he
no,
was?
I think he developed a lot more stuff than ever
Mm-hmm.
actually hit the market. Yeah, no, he was a
Thank you.
really smart guy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's I was, some of what I've read about, what he invented. Unfortunately, the problems he had as far as funding, whether it was to expand it, or whether because, they maybe certain ideas he had weren't convenient at the time. And I'm thinking, I wonder if they've got this stuff stored away somewhere. That's just me being
No,
a
I've definitely heard of stuff like that
conspiracist.
too. I mean, like yeah, apparently, obviously he was trying to do, a lot of people have heard of the wireless transmission of
Mm-hmm.
energy he was trying to do.
Right.
right? And a lot of other things like that. And some people go back now today and they say, well, we could never have done wireless transmission of energy. It would have caused problems with our radios, or it would have caused different problems. I'm sure we would have worked our way
Sure.
around it. You
Exactly.
know,
Sure.
he's got a lot of ideas that just never got any.
A lot of inventions, they got to start
Yeah.
somewhere and then they get tweaked.
Yep.
Like the first plane. Hello? You
Mhm.
know, who would have said that, we'd be going to the moon versus, that first thing that you look at it and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, talk about a suicide mission. But yeah, of course, tweaking, but somewhere along the line, you got to have that first innovation, that first, like what you described, whether you want to call it inspiration, idea,
Yeah.
and
We need to be
and
willing to think outside the box,
oh,
right?
of course, and you have
Yeah.
so many people that, and I can testify personally that when you come out of sleep, sometimes is when things come to you.
Yep.
That where all of a sudden that you're like, man, wow, why didn't I think of that before? It could be the simplest thing, by the way. I'm not talking about something really deep, but it's almost that moment that your brain actually, whether you want to say pulls it out of your subconscious or pulls it from somewhere, the Akashic records. We can go anywhere with that, okay? But it's that your brain is open to receiving that information or figuring it out.
Yeah, what's interesting about that too is sleep. Because you were talking about actually earlier, like how you have to kind of have a good connection to your dream world.
Hmm.
I forget how the actual way you phrased it, but it's so much related to that.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we sleep, we get pulled closer to our true center,
Yes.
because our egos are somewhat removed, right? And so when you talk
Exactly.
about creation within the fluid of this vortex, our egos are always like pulling us away from our true center, right?
Oh, that,
So
that Sure, because I was a practicing hypnotherapist, and one of the things is that I had a lot of clients that wouldn't go into REM sleep. All right, and I
right.
tell them the thing about the REM sleep is that that's when the critical factor in your subconscious and your mind goes down. That critical factor is the one that talks to you. Oh, that's BS. How could that be? All the stuff that chatter when you're asleep, especially when you go into REM, is when that quiets down. Okay,
Yep.
and you go through your experiences and you either discard some, pull it in, and because I had clients that would say, "Oh, I sleep," but they really weren't going down into REM level. And I mean, a lot of things come with it, but yeah, as far as that being the time where your mind opens up, like you want to say, like a flower, and for some people, it's sometimes your subconscious will talk to you through symbols in a dream, and other times it's just like what you said. You get that idea, that knowing, that aha moment. God, countless people's. It is at that time when you sleep that
Yeah.
that
So,
happens.
so if you're, yeah, exactly. So if you're far, this is just how I like to say it, right? So if you're far
Hmm.
away from your 0 point, basically you're not going to get to a lucid state in your dream, because
Okay.
basically your mind's going to turn off. You're too filled with your own ego,
Hmm.
and your subconscious essentially will control your dream world, and it'll pull you back towards your 0 point. But if you're already close to your 0 point when you go into the dream, now you have the potential of being lucid.
Sure.
Um, and so when it comes to just that natural energy of creation spiraling inward towards center in a black hole, the energy first hits outside and then it
Okay.
hits closer and closer to the center. And so when you compare the orbits of your experiences, remember I was saying like delta would be a certain size,
Sure.
theta would be a certain size, alpha and beta, and they get smaller and smaller towards the center. You notice that that energy of that's drifting inwards, creating all experiences, first actually interacts with delta and theta, and then
Hmm.
and then it goes into alpha beta, which is our awake state, and then it continues on to slow and fast gamma world. So like the energy of creation itself literally hits dreamland before it hits wake state.
Yeah. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. And we even have even certain musical beats that will put us into it, whether it's alpha wave or beta. As far as I tell everybody, you want to go, these, well, when we were, more people were going to movie theaters, these big blockbusters that would have that you were immersed in it, that beat really would put you into that immersive state
Right.
into the movie because it's changing basically your brain waves. Because we respond to certain beats. Most usually, the closer to a human heartbeat is what will put us there. But yeah, like you said, it's God, yeah. For my podcast listeners, Lucius, what is the website that they could go to find out more
Oh, I
information
have
about you?
luciuslabs.com.
And
So
that's
that's
spelled how?
LOOSHESLABS.com.
Okay. And I'm going to put a link to in the credits of the show. Wow. Let me tell you. What do you go to sleep and put a notebook on the on your nightstand or
No,
no?
no. I try. So that's where I've kind of somewhat trained myself too, right? To like have keep everything stored inside, almost like memory. Like
Okay.
so, like growing up, we didn't have cell phones that had everyone's numbers in it, right?
Absolutely
So
not.
how many people still remember phone numbers today,
Yeah. When you
right?
ask
So I
most
feel,
people what's their phone number, they'll go, yeah.
right, like they don't even know their own parents' phone number, like or their brother or their
Hmm.
sister's phone number. And so for me, it's always been like I've kind of noticed like we're becoming less talented in a way in
Of
that
course,
sense, like where
absolutely we are.
yeah, so like you don't need to know as much. You don't even know how to like you don't even need to know how to use a map because you can just hold your phone and follow the blue line. I'm not saying
Yeah.
so
No,
I
but it
you know
is.
it is a problem. I've noticed my map skills have diminished since the iPhone. You know what I'm saying? Like so I'm sure that's the same for a lot of people.
Hey, you
So
tell people, do the long division. They look at you like, what?
let me get my
Yeah, because,
calculator, right? Like
yeah, exactly. Give me my
yeah,
calculator. How about your multiplication tables?
right.
Of
And just
course.
now general information. It's like let me Google that, and so it's getting to the point where people aren't actually they're not really doing real learning in a way. They're
No,
more
it's
just
not.
like searching Google, and then if
Hmm.
Google's going to like filter your information, and then they're going to
Sure,
fact
of
check it,
course.
and so it's very like even more distorted, and people even more disconnected from reality.
Right. It's convenient, but there's a price to be paid for it. Like I
Exactly.
said, as far as our, you know, I know it sounds kind of corny, but your mind, you gotta like the brain is like a muscle. You gotta use it. You gotta
Totally.
work it.
Yeah.
Whether it's to when you have a problem, it's like, how am I gonna? I'm gonna throw it on you boys. Once upon a time, men knew how to change tires. You ask some guys how to change a tire, and they look like, huh? You know what?
Yep. And so, I mean, that's where it's like somewhat concerning. It's like I see where the future is going, and it's like, wow, I think we need to get more connected to Earth. Like,
Right, and I mean, when I'm talking, what I mean by that is the practical side of life. You understand
definitely.
I've got a problem. How do I do this? Okay, I don't like you said. I'm not going to Google it, even though let me tell you something. YouTube is great for how tos, but that's beside the point.
I've learned a lot doing that. But then I went and did it afterwards, right? I went and did it
Right.
physically because I had to. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? There's times where you might not have that, or something where okay, I got to figure this out, and sometimes you get a lot of people that just like they wig out and they just shut down
Yep.
because that process of I can figure this out, let me see what I could do is gone. Once upon a time, I think before all this access to ready information, we were more reliant, self-reliant.
Yeah, we had to figure stuff out.
We had to figure
Totally.
the stuff out. It was like,
Yeah, like one
oh,
person. That's why I always consider myself like the jack of all trades, but an expert of none kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
Like I've really tried to like become the expert of all trades, not just the
Yeah.
jack of all trades. You know.
Well, and I want to say that not all skills have to be monumental. How's that?
Right.
It it it's
Good
just
enough.
like, what is it in your life, whatever your life is, whatever your life circumstances are, that you figure stuff out to help you survive or protect yourself, or just, hey, I'm going to think of something so that I can water my plants better.
Yep.
Thinking outside, that saying, thinking outside the box. A lot of us are very in that box. It's like, don't take
Definitely.
me
I
out of
mean,
here.
that's what they define the word innovation to be is thinking outside the box in ways that result in
Hmm.
change, though. Because if you're just thinking outside the box and it doesn't result in
Right.
anything, then I don't know
Well,
if that's really productive thinking.
or that well, I guess the point is if it solves your problem or your challenge, that's all really
Mhm.
that matters, because really that's what you want. I want to solve this, whatever is going on, or that I anticipate this, and maybe these are the materials I have, and how am I going to figure this out? All right.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think from there, it's and then you gain in confidence once you figure that out. And I think that's what a lot of innovations in the past were based on of, you know, where after a while people gained confidence and they were like, okay, if I could do this and I could do this, then let me go beyond that.
Yeah.
Because what you think is possible turns out, what was it? Oh God, what was it when they did the 4 mile in a minute? the runner, and then the doctors were saying that it was physically impossible for humans to do it. And then once that runner did it, I can't remember his name now. Then a
And
bunch of people started doing it.
a high school student did it. Yeah, no, like I think we're limited by our expectations and
Yes.
assumptions.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
yeah, no, I mean, if and I always throw out the if because I know that science hasn't really fully like proved it, right? And everyone's very materialistic nowadays. So it's
Hmm.
like if our physical is literally the overlapping of mental projections of wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations, then oh, I forgot the point I was actually going to make just now.
Don't worry
But you were
about it.
oh,
No, no.
limited by your assumptions and expectations.
Yes.
Those literally are what work the fluid. Those longer waved waveform type of thoughts are what work the fluid before it comes into our awake state. So literally,
Hmm.
our ability within awake state is determined by our assumptions and expectations.
Do you think that our expectations will also pull circumstances or people into our reality?
Yes.
And we're talking here synchronicity.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
part of your light state exactly. So that's part of your synchrony. Totally. Yeah.
it's been great. I have loved speaking to you.
That
I want to wish you the best of luck
was
on
great.
your project. When do you expect that you're going to be releasing the book?
I already have the infinite pool of experience and awareness out. I also have the
Hmm.
physics of love out. Mind, the shifter and reorganizer of nodes will probably be out by the end of the month, next month.
Oh, okay, soon. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and then there's two more books that go with it in a way. The next one is Body, the Mind Spaceship, and then the other one after that's called Spirit, and it's going to be the Vortex of Time. But so then that'll be another hardback. So the first hardback has 6 books in it total.
Okay.
This one will have 5 books in it.
Okay,
And
so
then
what are you releasing them as ebooks first and then making a hardback compilation?
I always do an ebook, then I do a soft cover. For example, these are all the individual soft covers.
Uh-huh.
Like
Uh-huh.
they're smaller. They're like 50, 60 pages each. But
Okay.
then when you get 5 of them together, it ends up being like 340 pages. It was the first
Right.
hardback.
And then you put
Um,
into a hardback. Okay. Okay.
yeah, but I also have the digital versions because they're less expensive. I don't have to go make it, stuff like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You produce it.
Um, yeah, so
Uh,
it should be out soon. There you go.
Congratulations. I want to wish you the best of luck. And I'm going to be following up on your work but I got to let my mind cool off. I got to let my brain cool off for a little bit here, man, because it's like, oh boy.
It's a lot for people to take in, but I think
No.
from my understanding, my perspective, it really does seem to tie in science with, at the end of the day, spirituality
Sure.
without using
Yeah.
the word religion. But like it seems like all the religions
Mm-hmm.
stem from that same source to begin
Right.
with.
And we sometimes we want to make one exclusive from the other, and
Yep,
obviously there's definitely an overlap.
there
Uh,
is.
but we just, for the scientists, it's like, no, it's like, no, it's hard science, and then, and then of course you have the religious or spiritual, like the science is the enemy because they're trying to obliterate our, that we matter kind of thing. The
In my opinion,
theologians.
science proves spirituality. Like,
Yes. Well, now, I want to say there was a time though, maybe when science was really getting up and going, where they were like, you know, if you were religious or spiritual or whatever, you're like, oh, yeah, you
well,
poor
they're still like
superstitious
that. I
fool.
mean, most scientists are still like that, right?
Yeah,
Like, you
I know.
can't say certain words. You can't say
It's
using
like,
certain.
oh,
Yeah, don't say that word here. Like, oh no. No,
yes.
totally.
Are you one of those? You mean you can? Yeah, yeah. And I understand totally what you mean as far as, but no, I think that definitely is an overlap. There's areas that are exclusive one to the, like, but like that Venn diagram thing where they overlap. There's a thing there where
There's
they
that oval in
exist.
the middle, right, where the two circles work together. Totally.
Exactly, exactly, and they complement each other, like you said. Uh,
Yep.
and of course, we as humans are everything. We're not just
Within our
physical.
world, right? Like we think we're amazing. No, I'm just kidding. Like we are
No, we
amazing
are, and
beings.
we
Yeah.
are, we are. But
Yeah. We are.
but that's so much. It's like you said, we are outside of the ego thing. How's
We're,
that?
we're, we're part of a bigger structure too, though. That's all I can say.
Sure,
We are
of
amazing
course
things,
we
but we're
are.
part of a system. You
Yes,
know.
yes, we are.
Yeah.
Which sometimes that's why I'm saying when you get the ego out of the way,
Yeah.
then you can accept that, with even within that larger consciousness, whatever you want to call it, there it doesn't diminish your importance though. Yeah, yeah, because we kind of
Oh, of
have that
course not.
individualistic thing, like, you mean I will cease to exist? It's like, no, not really. And maybe at some point it won't matter to you. You see? So it's uh, thank you so much, Alex. I want to say, I want to, Lucius.
There you go. That's fine.
Lucius, take care. Good
Thank you for
luck to
having
you.
me.
On the
Yeah.
contrary, it has been my pleasure. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Ooh, let me tell you something. You think I'm kidding? My brain's going. Achoo, achoo, achoo. But let me tell you something. That is exactly the type of conversation I love because it pushes at the edges of what our existence is every day. Don't get me wrong. It makes you feel uncomfortable because you're like, oh man, what do you mean? There's another whole plane of existence or of interpretation of reality or of whatever. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily. You know what? In his case, he had this lucid dream or a visitation, and he kind of like got the full scoop. And then there's other people that, you can get it in small portions. And like I said, I think, I wasn't kidding with the thing about rigidity, that some people are so rigid that what they see or what their experience of life is or what they want life to be is like, don't move me out of here. This is it. And it's almost like the same thing as like when we were talking about Galileo is like, God forbid you should suggest that we are not the center of the universe. That our planet was orbiting a thing and, we're just part of, in that case, a solar system. To some people, this is like, don't take me any further. And it's not for everybody. But I really believe that as human beings, considering our capacity, we owe it to ourselves, at least always to keep an open mind when we start looking at what is our reality. Look at what he's talking about, as far as interdimensional, whether the existence of other dimensions, yes, but portals, are we looking into that thing about that we exist in a black hole, but we can only see because of the vantage point that we have? That's why I asked him, are we ever going to realize we're sitting in, I mean, talk about that. That could fry your neurons. But at the same time, it's fascinating because just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean you shouldn't entertain it. And at the same time, it doesn't mean we should accept everything because there's going to be some theories or some things that you make you uncomfortable. And later on, you're like, nah. If I take the uncomfortable out of it, this is no. And we're not meant to know everything about life or existence or the universe. I mean, we by this I mean we all have our limitations. Whether even if we go into transcendent meditation or we can free ourselves of our ego, there's always some limitations that we have. But as far as you could say, you know what, within the capacity that I have as my person, my brain power, my intelligence, whatever the case might be, I'm going to leave myself open to listening or looking at new theories or saying, you know what, that sounds way out there, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. That doesn't mean that it's not true. Now, the flip side of it is, you know, what are the consequences sometimes of discoveries or, for example, that thing at CERN, that collider that they just, I think, like in the beginning of July, they turned it back on. I mean, I don't know the exact, but I've heard, when I mean I've heard, I've read. Let me correct myself. I've read that sometimes they're doing stuff that they're really not sure what. In other words, they know what they're trying to achieve. They just don't know exactly what the results might be. Okay. In other words, we're trying to get this result, but maybe they don't know something that could come of that effort. Not because they're ignoring it, but because maybe there's an X factor in all of this that they're just not aware of. Because let's face it, I don't care how smart you are, what scientist, we are not all knowing. Okay, there's always the X factor. There's always some piece of the puzzle that's missing. Or like he said, you're going down the river, but between the time you got here and there, the fish swam by and the rock, okay. In other words, yeah, you could say, we've developed this formula and we're going to think we're going to do that and that and that and this and this and this, but in the and that coming and going, something shifts, something happens that you couldn't anticipate because that's just the nature of the fluidity of life, that maybe nothing is static as much as we would like to calculate that it is, and something comes off of left field. My thing of CERN saying, I've heard that some people are very worried about some of the work that they're doing there. I don't know enough about it to say one way or the other. The only thing I can say is I've seen some of the things that they've done to like ceremonies or shows that they've done. It's like, this is really weird, like really unusual stuff. It's like, I thought this was supposed to be a scientific endeavor, for the love of Mike. It's everything but scientific, really, really weird. And dare I say, dark. Yes. But anyway, that's a whole another show. Guys, I hope, before I forget, go to miamighostchronicles.com. There I have links for everything. Shows, podcasts. Sign up for my newsletter on Substack. I send out links to either articles or even some of the podcasts, some of my older podcasts and videos, stuff that people have forgotten about. Because I've had people say, hey, I can't, because it's buried, of course. I have copies of everything, by the way. Videos, MP3s, and video links, and the actual video. And a lot of these things have dropped off sources, and I've had people sometimes ask me about it. So that's why on Substack, about maybe once every 10 days, besides the other links, I send maybe an old video from maybe 5 years ago on some interview that was really good. And, and anyway, Substack, sign up for my Substack newsletter. And again, if you go to miamighostchronicles.com, if you go to mpellicer.com, I've got the links to shows, the podcast, which you can listen to the browser or download the MP3 file. That version, of course, the ones that you get from me are without commercial interruption. If you link over to any of the different podcast platforms, whether it's Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, or whatever, Amazon, you're always going to get your advertising stuff going on there. If you want it, no interruptions, go to my website and listen to it on the browser or download the MP3 file. All right. And by the way, people have asked me, yes, I'm still working on my book 3 of the Sybil Chronicles. Wow. I'm telling you, it's it's try to talk about multitasking, a lot of work. And I know that sometimes, they say don't be too critical of when you're writing, but sometimes the more you write, the more critical. And it's not so much the grammatics of it. It's just the idea that I'm looking at this and it's like, I want to be original. I don't want to come up with stuff that is like, I don't want it to trope. I mean, the version of some other book or story or movie. I'm really looking at this, not as the writer, but as the observer, saying, I got to come up with something just different, maybe familiar in some things, but totally different. And believe it, that's time consuming because not per se a writer's block, but it's where you think of that idea and then you're like, unfortunately, you dissect it too much and then you're like, no, you find too many faults with it and it's okay, but what if I do this? And also I'm, coming up with monsters. And when you're talking supernatural horror, it's very easy. It's very easy to fall into certain tropes because, and even though this is featuring, you'll see Dracula of all things, I'm really going off on left field on that. Totally different. So I'm working on that, guys. I got a lot of great guests coming on, so come back every week. And I'm telling you, I've either whether it's a returning person, like I said, sometimes years have gone by between our last conversation with them, or brand new, like Lucius, the mind bender. I've got a lot of interesting people lined up, so come back and thank you for spending this time with me. Take care.